And let's do this. All right, start recording. Share screen on here. I'm going to give you a chance to get into the Master Professor Pen. I'm going to give you a chance to get into the course website while I go, well, I step away for just a moment. So I'll be right back. All right, so as we talked about last week, we're going to output the Chuck Norris random joke. Now, what I wasn't aware of is how offensive some of these are, and I'm recording this, so I just don't. I wanted to change the data source, but at the same time, I don't want to confuse this. So if there's something potentially offensive, my apologies. I'm going to refresh it, and then in future lessons, I'll just use a different API. But I didn't want us to deviate from these key value pairs right here. I didn't want to change this up in our code. We good? Everybody clear in that preface?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're good there. This is what happens when you get immature people making an API. Okay, let's go ahead and first get our prerequisites out of the way. Okay, so we looked at a little bit of the fetch API, and this is a little bit a part of, well, this is a part of your homework from last quarter if you got there. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. First off, an API, application programming interface, a source from anywhere. And primarily 90% of the time, the stuff you're going to be working with is JSON, right? Like 90+% of the time, the data you're going to get back is in these key value pairs. Okay? And again, this is the unique ID of the fourth one, first, second, third. Okay. And these are the fields inside of there. And this links to that Airtable table. And here is the name, right? So if we wanted this field, we would go into the third or the fourth indices indicated by the 3.name, capital N, and it would give us this value. And there we are right there. Right, and that's how we would get that image. And so the same thing with the API. So let's go ahead and take a look at fetch. Okay, so I'm gonna, let's see here. Professor Pen. All right, we're all looking at the Professor Pen. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna slowly start building this thing out. And we're gonna walk through this. What I'm covering right now is the prerequisites for this stuff. That's all. All right, what was all this? Last class. All right, so that's the API source. And to do this, we're gonna run fetch, and fetch came with ES6. Okay, so there's the source. And I'm just gonna go ahead and paste this in for right now, right? But the first thing we're going to start with is fetched. Here, I can just comment this out. This will be easier on us. All right, so go fetch. Fetch what? Fetch this URL. Okay, so we can go fetch and just copy and paste that in right there, and that's perfectly valid. Right, that's perfectly not valid because it's a string. Right, that's perfectly valid. We can console.log this right now, and we would see that same data that I just showed. Okay, but instead we're going to go ahead and say, you know what, that's a lot to type. We're just going to type in URL. Both will work. You'll see both most times. So that's basically just being convenient. And then we have the dot then do what? Right. Well, we're going to get a response back. Sometimes it's RES, sometimes it's RESP. We're going to response, and then you're going to basically convert that response, because the stuff we get back, right? JavaScript says, I don't care what you got back. That's not my job to care. It's your job to care, designer. And so what you're going to do is say, hey, all that data I got back is a string of just stuff. Parse it out. I'll parse it out how? Take what I got back, this response, and turn it into JSON and I can work with. That's all. Now, if your thought is, boy, this is convoluted, and are we really going to need to type it this way in the future? The answer is no. There will be a better way, just like fetch came out to fix what was even harder before this. Okay, so if this is, in a lot of respects, this is a lot easier now than it used to be, right? All right, so we got fetch response. And again, I'm just rehashing some of the stuff that we covered, right? And then we're gonna keep moving this down. And we got the dot then again. Then do what with it? Well, take that and we're gonna create a variable here called data, right? Another way to think about this is API data. Okay, this is the data that you got back from the API. What you're gonna do with that is whatever you like. Right? What do I wanna do with that data, right? In this case, I just wanna log it out. I just want to log it out. Make sure that I can see this. I think I messed up my syntax here just a little bit here. All right, and we're just going to set up console.login out data. We're going to console.log out API data, and it should give us exactly what we just looked at. So let me put this into debug mode. Okay, and there's our console. Okay, let's see here. What's hung up? Dun, dun, dun. Anybody catch my error? We turned it into JSON. There's that other parenthesis there. Dot then do what? Convert that into, okay, as you talk to yourself. You know, the master professor, the CodePen Professor Pen, it has such issues. Come on. Fetch URL response data. There we go. All right, so this is where we get everything back. Good, good, good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we got that. The next part, we're going to get our prerequisite on. What is the next part here? Is this keyword. All right, so for this to work, we're going to use a really old example that I made a really long time ago. But it's, for me, one of the best ways to use this keyword. This keyword is one of the more confusing aspects of JavaScript in general, right? What are we referring to? This, okay? So the code you're looking at right here is jQuery code. jQuery is just a framework that we've used in the past to write JavaScript easier. Now we say, like, that's what the dollar signs are. So the dollar sign says go get this anchor link, and then if we click on it, do this. Now we just write document.add event listener. This is just a syntactic sugar, right? Just a cleaner way to write this. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and comment some of this stuff out. Let me go ahead and comment this stuff out. All right, so we're going to go ahead and console.log out the keyword this. You can't make a variable called this because this belongs to JavaScript. Right? We have this reserved word called this, and this refers to the thing that it's referring to. I know, but let that sink in for a second. Okay. This context can change, and the reason this exists is sometimes you're going to say, I want to refer to the thing I just clicked on. So right now, and this is different, and what's confusing about this, the keyword, is in CSS and HTML, you say, well, these are all separate items that I can attach an ID to, or I can attach a class to. Well, imagine if that ID or class was moved with each of these, moved with the link that you clicked on, and it wasn't static and stationary as part of the thing. Okay, and so that ability to say, like, act on what? Act on this. Act on the thing that I tapped on. Act on the thing that I clicked on. So the first thing we're going to say is this is just the window. What window? This window. Okay, this is everything inside the window. So that's this keyword before you do anything else. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment this block out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit save on this, and let's go ahead and take a look at this keyword now. Okay, and I made this little pen, so I'm going to click on the A link. Okay, these are all the links. Let me refresh this again. Okay, I click on the B link. These are all the links. And so what's happening here is without the keyword this, it's going in and it's grabbing the anchor link, all the anchor links. Well, we don't want the anchor link. We just want the one that we clicked on. Well, how would you know that without this concept of this, right? Is everybody good in that part? It's going to get everything or just one thing. And I don't want everything, and I don't want one thing. I want the thing that I clicked on, this thing, okay? And this, closures, hoisting, these are some of the more abstract concepts in JavaScript, and they just take time to get, even seasoned developers mess up this and closures and hoisting all the time. Good so far? We were with me, all? Hit spacebar. Chime in anytime. Chime in. Yeah. What? I'm teaching. Okay, sorry. She's like, I'm like, what? Like, emergencies only. Okay. Okay, that's not an emergency. All right, so I'm going to comment this out. This block code. Now what we're going to do is, instead of saying when I click on something, refer to this. Right? So what it's going to do is it's going to change the text. Right? There's a method called text that says just change the text on the thing that I clicked. Okay, and I'm spending time on this, right? Just so we can see this, the keyword. Now, everybody clear on that? Before I changed all the anchor links, I said, no, just the one that I clicked on, this one. All right, there's your 3-minute version of this, 4 or 5-minute version of this. All right, so there's this keyword. With me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This keyword, we can actually move faster. Just y'all. Okay. Ustedes? Can I say ustedes? Is that, yeah? Ustedes. Mariah, do you speak Spanish?
Un pequeño.
Oh. It's more than me. Okay. Let's see here. This keyword. All right, so let's take a look at JavaScript classes now. So the thing about JavaScript classes is, let's use it first. Let's go ahead and use this JavaScript class. So what I'm going to do in the professor pen is just use this class. All right, so we have this thing called the date object, right? But Colin, I thought we're talking about classes. And I'm just like, well, hold on, right? First, I want you to, before we start talking about like why and when you should use a JavaScript class and all that, let's just get to this idea of why does it exist in the first place. All right, so every time we use the keyword new, right, we can't have a variable called new because these are all reserved words. This command is basically says make a new instance of the date, because you might want to have multiple dates in your application. And so objects in class are different ways to store stuff, but conceptually they're more similar than they are different. Okay. And so how we get into how they're different is a different lecture, but I just want us to start using this stuff. And so we get into here, and so I'm going to comment out the one on time, and let's take a look at the one on console. We're basically creating a variable here, and the date might change. So we're going to let today, okay? And we're going to use the keyword of new. And every time we use the keyword of new, we're instantiating, right? There's that fancy word of we're creating a new instance of this. So really we can have today, today, tomorrow, right? Yesterday, right? And we can have all these different instantiations, right? Of this, right? Of this object, right? And again, I'm teaching you classes through something you already know called objects. Yeah. And instead of getting and we can get the full year, right? And of course, it's going to be the same for each of these. And so the date object is a really good way to start looking at classes, because you're going to want to have multiple dates. Like without this concept, without this idea, the calendars don't work, right? Because as soon as you set the date on your to-do item, it's going to rewrite any previous to-do item. Like imagine a calendar app without the ability to have different instances of the date. If you only had one date, right? So, all right, so we good on conceptually why we have to instantiate new things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. All right, so we know that why that exists, and then I'm just using the reference of the date object right here. Okay, and there's date, there's math, as we've used many times, and so there's the reference for that. And all I did was say, like, give me the new, what is today? What is the date of today? So if I go today, so let time, right? And then we're using this method called get full year. Okay. But watch what happens if I take out the method of get full year. It's going to give me this, right? This is everything. You get the entire date object back. And I said, oh, you want the entire date object? Here you go. Like, well, I know I just want to get the full year on this thing. And they go, oh, okay. You just want 2020. Yeah. And so we're traversing on down into that object. Yeah. And so the same thing here with get time. Now, the thing to note about dates is, if there's no, if there wasn't a universal standard, this stuff would be really, really confusing. And so you're going to get these back. And that looks confusing, but that can be parsed and reformatted to be the actual date. And so which one would I use if I actually get time? We can come in here, right? So there's a get time method, right? And every time you see this prototype, it means that there's an object. It means that there's a class somewhere inside of JavaScript somewhere, okay? Because if you wanted to make something, you just wanted to show the date, and your first task was, hey, go write a date object for your browser. You're never going to make anything. Does this make sense? Like, go create a math object. Okay, and so anytime you see this idea of prototyping, right, there are instances, right, and those things are stored in objects and classes, right? So this is what we get back, and then you can reformat that time, but that's a different class. Good. Right, you take that string and you just split it up. Okay, so there's that. Any questions on this part? What part are we on? We are on classes. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look now at a sample JS class. This is pulled straight from your textbook because I thought it was a really good one. Okay. All right, so we're going to use this constructor method right there. So first off, let's go ahead and I'm going to comment that out. All right, and down here, oh, other way around. Dyslexia. We have to first make the thing before we use the thing. All right, so we're going to use this keyword class. Okay, and this is why when we have to specify our HTML class, we have to use class name, and this is the exact reason why. All right, so we're going to create this new thing that we're going to make many instances of. We're going to have many users. You're going to have many students. You're going to have many players, right? And so anything that you don't want to have to recreate. And again, animal classes was how it was taught to me, and it still rings so true to me. Like the only way this has ever made sense to me is this idea of animal classes, right? Feline, canine, right? And so invertebrates and what other animal classes, right? And so you're asking, what makes a canine? What makes a feline, right? And you're looking at what's similar about these, and you're using this as a template, right, to make a dog or a wolf. What else is a canine? Dog, wolf. Help me out. Dog, wolf. Dingo? Is it dingo? Yeah, dingo dog, right? Good. All right. So we have these classes, okay? And they were saying, well, what's similar about all of those? And that's when you construct a class, right? That's when you have these things that that things are similar, but that can be different, okay? All right, so you're going to use this constructor method, construct this class, and these are the 3 properties that you're making, right? So let me highlight this, first name and first name go there. Right, last name and last name. I'm assuming you two probably did this because some of your classmates didn't. Good? Okay, all right, so that's age and age, and then we're just assigning them to this. And this is when this keyword becomes important, because what are we referring to? Not just the global first name, but the first name for this class. Not just the global last name, the last name for this class. And we're using the constructor to create it. And then down here, we're just going to simply use it, right? Now we can say, now that we've had it, we can instantiate with the word keyword new, okay, capital S user, and then we can reset all the values. So that's first name goes right there. Here's last name right here. Okay. And a good way to think about this is right here, this is your submit form. Right? Like when someone goes in and enters this in a new a contact form, right? That it's defined somewhere. Otherwise, that data would have nowhere to go. Okay, and sometimes that can be stored as a class or an object. Good. All right, same thing with our data CMS. That stuff is getting stored somewhere. All right, check with me on this one. All right, so those are our prerequisites for this. All right. I always get prerequisite and prerequisite mixed up. Prerequisite. Help me out, Stephanie. Is it prerequisite? Is a what?
It's prerequisite.
No, there's also a prerequisite
Is
too.
there?
Yeah. Am I like literally being recording myself, like messing this up? Is this when I was a? All right. There's a prerequisite.
I've honestly never heard it prerequisite. The only one I've ever heard is prerequisite.
That's one.
Oh.
Interesting.
So. Oh, good. Woof. Whoa, that would make my heart skip a beat. I mean, I guess I could edit that out if I was wrong. I don't want to. As a kid, I would say, let's be more Pacific. And I kept saying it wasn't until the 7th grade where someone basically said, no, I think you're trying to say specific. And I was very, very embarrassed. I also gave a presentation and I said this word. And I kept saying resume, resume, resume. And the teacher didn't want to embarrass me. Like, God, bless her heart. Didn't want to embarrass me. And so at the end of the presentation, she pulled me aside and says, it's resume. I was so embarrassed. All right, more embarrassing stories. But that's not why you're here. You're not here to hear my embarrassing stories. All right, let's go now. Now we have our prerequisites. Let's go ahead and take a look at our API. Right, here it is. There's the API. How we get data and all that stuff, we've already discussed, but these are our key value pairs, and all we want is this dot value. Right, so it's gonna be this dot value, whatever this is, right? Then the value. So which data, and the only reason I picked this one is this returns only one thing. That's all. That's the only reason I picked this API. I was like, let's just I need an API that's going to see me just one thing. Okay. So let's give me one thing at a time. Okay. Right. Okay. So we got one thing. So we checked our data and we take a look at the reference. We're good to go, right? Don't skip this step, please. Okay. Because if your data isn't coming in correctly, all that work that you're doing is for nothing. All right, the next check that we need to do is make sure our React template is actually set up and ready to go. So I'm gonna come in here. Again, this awesome step. Okay. And what you'll see in your homework, not homework, but in Codecademy is import React, right, from React. Okay. So same thing here, import React DOM from React DOM. Yeah. Essentially, it's doing what we're doing right here with CodePen. So, but FYI on that. All right. Let's go ahead and get our basic setup. Okay. There's that. Come inside of here. There's that, and there's our quote. All right, and we know while we're here in terms of basic setup, let's go ahead and style this thing. And it's not just a quote, right? If it's a quote, it should be in a block quote. What was I thinking? Let's go ahead and make this thing a block quote. My goodness, that's not semantic at all. There's a quote, and then we're going to come here and style block quote. And this is where the majority of our time should be spent in this part right here. Okay, FZ, let's go ahead and make this thing 4M. What else y'all got for me? How else can we make this thing a quote? Italic. What do we got? Border left? Typically it's like a border left. Oh, is it border left style? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm remembering this. 10px solid red. Is that right? No, dang it. How do we do a border left? Border left style would be solid. I should look this up. Oh, we're getting close. Border. And then let's see if I can just override this. And then border left. Oh, shoot. Anyway, y'all don't got anything for me? How should we style this?
Mm,
Oh, here we go. Ever out of ideas? Whoa, it's running slowly. Okay, let's see here. Who's got a slick testimonial? All right, here's some slick testimonial styling right there. All right, let's take this one. Simple block quote. Don't want the cursor. So much for simple. All right, we'll come back. We'll say that for the end. But that's where the majority of your time should be, right? Is style this, make this any way you want. Okay. Padding, give this some padding. All right, there's our quote. All right, so we got this quote, okay? I want this Playfair font. Playfair. Oh, we'll get a font from. All right, now I'm stuck on this. See, told you, still a designer. Playfair font. I don't believe what the internet tells you. I'm still a designer. I just have to code more than I used to. All right, let's see here. Playfair. Y'all, how do we do this? It changed. How do we get a Google font now?
You go to, when you're on that home page, you select a font. So you select this style,
Okay.
and then it'll come up on the side. You go to embed.
Stephanie, thank you. So let's just import it. When did that happen?
It happened a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, that's right. We came across it in Web 1. It basically negated my screencast. It's like, oh, shoot, the whole UI changed. Thanks, Google. There we go. All right, thanks, Stephanie. All right. All right, so we got that. This is where we want to spend our time. Have fun doing what we just did there. All right, that's where we want to be. All right, so we got this block quote. Now we got this all set up. Now we're going to slowly step through this. Now we're going to make our stateless component. Okay, we want to render out this thing, right? And so what we need to do is we need to cut that out like so. Go ahead and just call this thing app because it's easiest to type. Const app capital A use. Okay, we're not passing in any data, right? We're not passing in any data right now. And that would be props, but it's just a heads up for future lectures. All right, and then of course we need the return statement. And if we have a return statement spanning multiple lines, okay, we're gonna need the left parentheses, right parentheses. And the reason I say this is anytime you use anybody else's library or framework, it's gonna have stuff like this. And I like to just not fight it, okay? Because as you saw in this example, there's all those dollar signs everywhere, right? Dollar sign, left paren, right paren. And that's just more syntactic sugar. And React is saying, look, you just got to follow our rules. Okay. And these aren't JavaScript rules, these are React rules. And one of the things that to this day that I'm still getting a handle of is where does React start and stop? Right. But eventually it'll just, become a little bit more intuitive about that. But you'll get used to it. All right. Again, like we don't need these, but just put them in because you might have multiple block quotes. So just put it in now. All right. So there is our stateless functional component. This thing doesn't have any state. No new data is coming in to change something about it, right? This thing isn't bored or excited. This thing isn't loading or waiting to load. This thing isn't already loaded. And I'm saying all this because I want us to start thinking about state. This is a stateless component. This thing is essentially static right now, okay? There's nothing here to change it. All right, so we good on the stateless component? Okay. All right, no state. So we're done with that. So we got the setup, right? Let's moving on down, component with state. So now we're gonna put in state. And some of you, like right now, are in the state of confusion. Some of you are in, right? And I say the same thing over and over again because it's definitely true, right? Like, so what we want to do now is I'm going to comment this out, and let's go ahead and build this out really, really slowly. We're going to have to use that class keyword, right? So to get state, we're going to have to use this JavaScript idea of a class. And we've already talked about what a class is. And to do this, this is when we begin to use classes, because our components are going to need state, right? And at first, when I remember the first time I saw this, I'm like, wait a minute, this is kind of weird, okay? And so this is just what we need to know. So now we're going to define our component as app, right? And then it's extending, right? So again, these are right here are all JavaScript keywords. It's extending what? Well, it's not extending JavaScript, because React is already extending JavaScript. It's extending, right, capital R React. This is, again, one of the things, sometimes it's lowercase, it means different, sometimes it's in a different spot. But there is a React, well, inside of this one right here, right, inside of the React core, right, there's an object in there, right, that's going to allow us to make this component with state. Okay. And this is where all your stuff goes. All right, so inside of that, there are two methods. The first one is the render method, and let's do that one first. Okay. All right, so that's now the render method, confusingly, has a return statement, and this gets people new to React initially. Like, it has a return statement inside of there. Well, what do we need it to return? We actually need it to return this stuff up here, all that stuff that we just wrote statically. Okay, all right, so before I move on, are we good in this part? Okay, we have render, return. Did y'all finish? Where are y'all? And are you working through the, what's it called, Codecademy?
It's going
Yeah.
slow, but yeah,
Yeah,
working
it's
through it.
going really slow.
I find it's not very hard. I find it, right, because
It's not, I don't think it's hard. It's just time consuming.
yes,
It's taking a lot of time to get
right.
through it.
It is so hard to understand what they want.
Mhm.
I was like, wait, what is? All right, so yeah, all right, that's good. No, I'm not the only one. I was like, what is it? What are they asking here? So end of component. I'm gonna put all these comments in for no reason other than for lecture today. Okay, so this is the end of the component, right? This wraps up the component. It's just our same nesting. And the render method basically just puts stuff onto the screen. All right, so before we do the constructor, okay, any questions about this part? This is the stuff you just need to get used to looking at, okay? All right, so we need our components, we need to render stuff, and then we also need to construct all the stuff for our class. Okay, so just like we had the class constructor, if we don't construct properties for our class, if we don't construct methods for our class, it's why use a class at all? Okay, so we're going to use this JavaScript construct called the constructor. Right, this is our constructor method right there. It's right inside of there. And we just get used to this. Okay, and again, these two things are inside of our app component. Okay? And there's other things that we could put inside of our app component. Okay, sometimes you'll have the entirety of an app inside of your component, right? The entirety of an app is inside of our component. Again, take a look at the difference in what we started with right before. We just had this, and this is still valid, right? But it's not what we're doing because we need state. So this needs to go away. All right, so this is our capital C component. Okay. All right, so now we have this constructor method. So right now, the next thing I'm going to take a look at is this idea of the super, right? Super method and constructor. For right now, without making lecture go long, just take this as read, right? That this needs to be there. So just understand that that's there, and we will break this down in another class. All right, so then we're back into using this, right? This keyword, and we have another property called state. Okay, and we can stop typing right there. And so now what we want to do is we want to set our state, right? And the easiest way to set your state is with an emoji or is with just plain text, right? And the state right now could be, let's be more excited. Excited. All right. So now our state is excited. What I put in the example, yeet. Our state is yeet. Okay. Or just our, right. And so this all changes. Okay. So now what I want you to do is go into your render method, right? We're going to go ahead and console.log out what our state's going to be. Okay. So so inside of the render method, inside of our render method right here, sorry, go ahead and console.log out the state. Right. I hope I'm putting this right spot. So we're going to console.log. Okay. We're just not going to say state. We're going to say what state? Well, it's going to be this dot state. Now, as you saw in your homework, right, we want this to evaluate. Okay. So we can go to this dot state and come into here in debug mode. I'm clicking. Right. There's our console. And there we go. We just outputted our state. And we can change our state again to something more practical, right? It would be like, is your state loading? Is this thing loading? Right? Is the page loading? And you'd want to say loading. And just like in your homework, you say like if it's loading, do this. If it's already been loaded, do this. If there's an error, right? And this will be future lectures. If there's an error, do this, right? And state management, if we go any further into state management, we get into really complicated applications, and we get into feature-rich thing, right? When I say complicated, it's not a bad thing. It means like you can actually do quite a bit. So all of our applications have state, right? Are you logged in? Is a state. And managing state is one of the more challenging aspects of making an application. But we're not making an application right now, right? We're pulling data into our template. All right, and that's the good thing about Dado CMS and Gatsby is like they're taking care of all this complexity for us. Like we're just going to output your stuff. You let us take care of that. Okay, so there's our render method for this dot state. All right, any questions on state so far?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. All right, is this procedural way of doing 1 to 5, is this helpful at all?
I mean, I think it's helpful. Like being able to
Mhm.
go back and look at this definitely when I'm doing like homework and stuff. So
And having each part being able to be forked or typed out myself and saved individually so I can build off of it in the future.
It makes me want to create a tool that I want to see how code evolves. Too often you get somewhere and it's just like, here's the solution, or here's a problem and the solution. Like, I want to see how it morphs. And I wish someone would make that. There's no good way to see how this stuff morphs. Yeah. Because even version control is like this commit, this commit, this commit. It's like, oh, I don't want to see the commits. I want to see all the micro commits and all the stuff in between. Anyway, make that
save the full undo history so you can go all the way back through it.
Yeah.
Even when it's been saved and closed.
Can I do a quick tangent real fast? I want someone to make the code equivalent of this drawing videos. You know how people record themselves real-time drawing?
Speed drawing?
Yeah, right? And how because photorealism, especially the ones that are photorealistic, no one believes that, that they did it. And so they have to record themselves drawing these photorealistic, right? And if we had the code equivalent to this, this is our $1 billion idea. I've always wanted this for code. Show me how that evolves, right? Show me where all the layers and the shading, right, come into play. Because, I know you started out with gestural lines, right? And I know that you're going to, put in the layer. My goodness. So, this is my retirement activity, by the way. When I retire someday, I'm going to learn how to do photorealism. So, what's y'all's retirement activity?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Think about it. Wow, look at that.
Mhm.
All right. Well, I know it's not going to be, your retirement activity is not going to be learn React. So let's get into this. All right. So now we need to get data. And to get data, we have this method called component did mount. When I first saw component did mount, I almost threw my hands up in React. I'm saying, what? But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Is something else is checking to see whether or not the page changes. And that's what component did mount essentially is doing. Did new data come in? Was the page refreshed? Right? Did a new email come in? Do I have to update the page because a new email came in? And component did mount, you know, if we look underneath the hood, actually it does a lot for us, right? So just kind of hang in there. And the way I think about this is we really only have three things, okay? Right? We have our constructor, right? To hold all of the properties, okay? We have our render method, the verb to put the stuff up on the page. And component did mount is basically a little bit of both, right? Checks all the stuff in between, like right? And if the page is going to change, when does it change? Okay. And in this case, the page is going to change when we get new data. All right. So we have constructor, component did mount, and render method, which has a very confusing return statement inside of it. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna fetch this API data just like we did before. Okay, so let's go ahead and just slowly walk through this. Okay. All right, so just like from our micro pen, we went in, we're gonna fetch this data, and then we're gonna turn the data into JSON. And then from that data, we're gonna do something. And you can just stop right there. Okay, and this is where this gets, and this is where your syntax just becomes a little bit problematic. But just so you're aware, okay, we just have our standard arrow function. Okay, take the API data. I'm just going to give a lot of spaces here so we can see what's happening. And now we want to do is check to see that the data is okay. And in this case, I named it API data. So now we're just going to console.log out API data. Okay. And you can see the pen and we can check this, right? And there we go. We see that the API data is coming in just fine. And so that would be the step prior to actually putting it onto the page. Like, did the data come in okay? Okay, all right. So now let's talk about order of execution for a second. When are we going to assign, and you can look at the pen and see the answer, but when are we going to assign the data, right, to the app itself, right, to the component? Because data, we can't output console.log, right? We need to store this data somewhere, right? So essentially, when are we going to assign the new state, right? As soon as it comes in. So that gets us into this next part. So we have a method here, right? And this is our check. Here, I'll just kind of work ahead here. It says, all right, so now I need to change the state on this thing, right? And some of the state is the new data. So this on this thing, okay, we already went through this keyword, set the state. And we have a set state method, okay? And what we want to do about the state isn't change the loading, right? If we take a look at our constructor, really what we're changing here, right, is the data. So we're going to come into here and change this to, right, data gets what? We're going to create another variable called data. Data gets what, y'all? Our variable data needs to have what data from where?
So pulling the data from the API that we're calling to.
Yeah, so you're pulling the data from the API. And Stephanie, where did we store that API data? What is the name of the variable that is stored in? Very aptly named, by the way. What did we just console.log out?
API data.
All right. Perfect. You got it. That's it. Right. So this is contained inside of here. It's in those fences. We need to get it out of those fences, right? And pass it out of those other fences so we can render it, right? And there's that scoping inside of JavaScript. Now we're getting into JavaScript, pure JavaScript, right? These are the conventions of pure JavaScript. All right, so now that we've passed the data in, well, that's easy enough. Now we're gonna, instead of doing this block quote, right, this is just, right, instead of doing this, just this random block quote, what we wanna do instead, right, is re-render the page. Oh, look, let's take a look at this example. Oh, I should have this. What is in that wrap? Right. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go this dot, okay. All right, we want this. Let me get my syntax correct before I mess this up and confuse us all. All right. Oh, I got ahead of myself. Okay. So now that we set the data to API data up in here in this dot state, we just don't want it to say loading anymore. We actually need to pass that in. So at the beginning, right, and a good way to do this is an object of data. Okay. It's just to create an empty object up here. Right, part of the state is this empty object of data. Okay, just like we set empty arrays, right? We just got an empty object. Okay, and inside that we're going to say, hey, this data, right, is there. All right, this part right here is some of the more confusing aspects of React. But the way I like to think about it, this is just the boilerplate, right? This is the stuff that we just need to get done what we need to, right? So again, this property refers to this property down here, which is getting data from here passed into here. I know. Bear with me. Okay, this is about as simplified as I can make it. One of the hardest things about this one is like, how much stuff can I take away to where this thing is still functional? Right? Because if you get on CodePen, like anywhere, like they're really nice examples with lots and lots of code. I'm like, let's keep distilling this down. And so this is the furthest I could distill it. And if you can distill this any further, please let me know. All right. So follow my mouse cursor. We're getting it from this source, right? We're turning it into JSON. We're storing it here into this temporary variable. We've checked it there. Okay. And then what we're doing here is we're passing that data into the state. Okay. And then from there, our render method has access to it. So if we kept it inside of here, our render method doesn't have access to it. Okay, so we can close that out. And then down here is the kind of straightforward part. All right, get this class. All right, what about this class? Well, there's something here called state. Okay, inside of state, there is something called data. Okay, so now what we're doing is just the reverse. We're just doing the reverse of this, right? Because when we're looking at this API, we were going down into it. Now we're just doing the opposite, right? So instead of going down, we're just working our way up. And then we see here that the value is what we want. And then we go dot value, right? And then that should do it. And now every time we refresh the page, right? So you basically now have this API template, right? Where you can go get another API and essentially just swap that out. And there's some gotchas depending upon the API, but yeah. And then of course you're going to have to change it to not be dot value, right? Whatever the API dot name dot age. You know. All right. Whew, that was a journey. We did it. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. That is state. Get ahead on your something Codecademy. Use the Codecademy cheat sheet. I do like that. I wish that was something I had done for the class. I like copy and pasting from their cheat sheet. It saves me the typing and the syntax errors. So do y'all know what I'm talking about? The Codecademy cheat sheet.
I think so.
Inside of, let's see here, inside of any one of the tutorials. So we're looking at here. I can stop recording here. No